There are a lot of problems lurking for us in seemingly ordinary everyday life situations. For example, who would have thought that footwear can form an incorrect movement stereotype and a wrong perception of movement in us? If we take a close look at our foot, we will find that the furthest point of the foot is usually the big toe. In some cases, there is also this toe, which is quite long. But let's assume that the furthest point of the foot is this big toe and sometimes the second one. We will focus on the big toe. That is, this is the furthest point of our support that we can rely on. This is our foot, the big toe. And the direction of the knee movement should be exactly towards the big toe. Thus, when we make some movement, the direction of the knee movement corresponds to the direction of the farthest point of the foot, which is the big toe. But this perception often changes because of shoes. For example, there is such footwear where the farthest point does not correspond to the big toe. By the way, there is a lot of such footwear, but most often it is just like that, and therefore the impression arises that the farthest point is not here. But over here, right here in this place. And because of this, he starts to change his movement. Depending on the perception of where the furthest point of foot support is, I will move my knee in a certain way. That is, if I understand that this is the furthest edge I can lean on, then my knee will strive towards it. It will strive towards it, right here, towards the big toe. But if I think that the furthest point is right here, like, for instance, it might seem in this footwear, for example, that is here if you look closely like this. Right here, you see, he also got unlucky here. He also has such a case. Thumb, middle finger, they are about the same length. Usually the thumb should be longer. And the motion, it should be directed here. The joints are made, constructed like this, specifically, so that the knee moves here. And it has a large range of motion here, a large range of motion. In this direction, along this line, the knee moves along this line. From the heel to the big toe, it should move. But if the shoe doesn't match, so to speak, the position of the toes, then I think the furthest point is not here, but right here. And during the step, I change the position of the foot to this. I place it where I think the center of the foot is, and I change the movement of the knee. It starts moving over here for me, but it doesn't correspond to the big toe. And therefore, the movement for me is towards the center of the foot, and it doesn't correspond to the angle of movement in this joint. Thus, the movement itself turns out to be shorter. Here, I would have a greater range of motion. Here, it is less. And it creates a lot of problems above. Because of this movement, I can't do well here. It ends very quickly for me during the push. That is, for example, I'm walking, running fast and long. Here I am making a move, and when it's going in the right direction for me, along the thumb, the movement when it's going for me, I'm creating this reserve of movement. And at this moment, I get a push. I effectively use my entire leg in pushing off. Once I push myself off, if, however, I use the wrong angle of motion, if my knee is trying to go here, and it's even worse if it's trying to go here, Then the angle of movement changes. It's going here for me. It ends very quickly. And I have to start the push too early. That is, I have to start it right here and push myself out. It would be convenient for me to do this. Due to the foot's wrong position, I have to start it too early. And it ends too early. And the calf muscle engages too early in the movement. I rise onto my toes too early. And I rise onto my toes at the moment when I'm still over the foot. And here I have a bouncing upward movement. And these tiny, thin little bones of the foot, they start lifting my weight up with every step. The foot's thrust movement is at the very, very end. But if I initially made the wrong foot movement, it arises under me, and this push I make by jumping up, thus overloading the calf muscle, injuring the knee joint more. This is the incorrect position, incorrect representation. Naturally, it causes a change in the position of the toes. I alter the motion angle. They begin to distort incorrectly. And this is exactly what forms this curvature of the big toe. Here it starts to look to the side. That is, if you change the angle of movement. Here the fingers are positioned at the angle at which you will move. But not only with this problem. The same thing here, look, if I'm going up the step. And if my knee is moving correctly, I create a good range of motion. I change the mobility normally. But if it started moving in the wrong direction for me, then I don't have it. You see, it has already stopped here. It doesn't go any further. That is, if I move my knee in the direction of the thumb, I can make the movement as much as I want. It doesn't stop. If I move my knee towards my little toe, that's it. The movement stopped right here. To make further movement, here I started it. I do it in the direction of the thumb. I do it repeatedly. And here I do the upward movement very well. If I started doing it towards the little finger, it stopped here for me. To continue it further, I need to stand on the outer edge of the foot, or transfer it up to the fingers. And here I have to make a push. It takes a lot of effort. And also use the gastrocnemius muscle for this. In this way. Regardless of that, no matter what shoes you are in, your toes do not change. That is, this fashionable pointed shoes. You should keep in mind, regardless of that, how much you have this sock. It is located here closer to the center. Your topada does not change, and you need to keep this in mind in your movements. That's how it goes, as they say.